So, hi Joachim.
Hello.
So, where I want to start is whenever it comes time to start on a new album, what goes through your mind? What is kind of what kind of creative juices are flowing?
I think mostly it's a lot of stress just going through the body because at the end in the beginning you sit there with a blank piece of paper more or less. You have nothing.
Mm,
And after 12 studio albums going into album number 13, I mean that's hard. It's a tough nut to crack to know where to start. But luckily, I think a big difference nowadays is that Oscar, everything starts with Oscar when it comes to
mm.
songwriting. Everything starts there and it ends with me. So it's a teamwork, but I'm kind of depending on him that he's going to deliver a demo to me that I can finalize by adding my vocal melodies where needed, and also at the end of the day I need to add the lyrics. A good thing now is that Oscar is constantly in a creative mode, so to speak, that if he comes off stage and there's like an idea, he has his setup. He has his
Mm.
little travel guitar. He has a little small like recording setup, so he can just run to the tour bus. He can go to the hotel room. So whenever creativity hits him, he's ready for it. And I think that's a big difference. It not only saves time, but it also kind of saves ideas that maybe would go to waste
Right.
unless he was ready or prepared to record it. So um, but if you go back to the stress factor, I mean, the first album was, I wouldn't say easy. Second album, yeah, you know what, you still had so many ideas inside of you that you could develop into new songs. Now album 13, you really needed to get deep inside of yourself, like to really dark places, I would say, to find things that made sense and things that you haven't written before. I mean, it's hard to reinvent yourself, 13th
Sure.
time. But and also you sit there writing an okay song. We can do that in a day. That's no problem. But okay is not good enough. It has to be fucking epic and awesome and it has to be great. And to get there, it's a lot of hard work. A lot of hard work.
That balance, because I find this interesting, especially with bands that have been around for a while, and I think this is alluded to in the bio as well. But this balance between pushing the band forward and challenging yourself and doing something new, but also keeping kind of what made HammerFall kind of intact. How do you walk that line between those two things? And as you mentioned with Oscar, does the fact that you have a kind of a mobile studio on tour, does that help with the energy of the songs as well? Because I can imagine if you've just come off stage or something and you have an idea, it's going to be an energetic idea probably.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I think that the most important thing is that if you have an idea, you need to get rid of it somehow.
Mm,
And if you don't record it, you will get rid of it because you will forget about it.
sure.
So in this case, it's like if you have an idea, record it and just put it in your files, because you can always pull up these files later on. If there's like you need, there's like a missing part in a song. Maybe you recall in your memory, like, okay, I remember on this tour, I had some really cool ideas in this vein, and you pull these files back. But of course, if you have too many ideas, it's really hard to find them in your files. And that's the case for me, having a lot of like small melody notes, like lyrical notes. I just record on my phone, and I have thousands of those now, you know. And so where do you start going through that?
Sure.
Um, I'm not really sure what the first question was here, because I kind of jumped on the second one.
But
Just remind me.
yeah, I'll rephrase it a little bit. Just walking that balance between moving the band forward and challenging yourselves in what you do. Obviously,
Yes.
after 13 albums, you want to do something fresh and keep things interesting. But there's also something that makes HammerFall great. So not kind of making something interesting without kind of losing what makes HammerFall special.
I mean, HammerFall is a trademark. We started to play heavy metal in a time when no one really asked for heavy metal, I would say. But for us, it was always a matter of writing the songs, recording an album that we would buy ourselves. Because mid-90s, hey, you couldn't really buy the music that you wanted to hear. So the only solution was, well, we have to write the fucking album ourselves. And that's been the case ever since, I think, because we sit down writing the music. As long as you write from your heart, it's going to be right. As soon as you start overthinking, like, oh my God, where should we go from here? Then you're going to get lost, because then you're probably just going to end up doing what someone else has done before. I'm not saying that we invented heavy metal. Hey, we did not. But at least we kind of took the bits and pieces that we love from the 80s, and that became HammerFall. And now I think we have developed our own sound, and you can really probably tell that, this is a HammerFall song, because the type of riffing with the melodies always, sitting in the front row, being, first of all, the riff, it's a very riff-based type of music, but also extremely melodic, I would say. And I think I answered this question a little bit in a previous answer, that yes, we can write, a good album in a couple of weeks, no problem. But I mean, we have to reinvent ourselves with every album. We really need to dig deep into ourselves and open doors that we haven't opened before, in order to please ourselves. Because at the end of the day, Oscar needs to be happy. I need to be happy with our work, because that was the case with Glory to the Brave. We were so damn proud of this album, because this was an album that we would have bought if someone else recorded it and wrote it.
Right.
And this is still the case. And then what's going to happen, you don't know. But whatever happens with an album, if it doesn't sell, you know what? It doesn't matter, because we are happy. I am happy. I could probably write different types of songs, but I wouldn't be proud of it in the same way I asked with this. And that goes with the lyrics too. If I'm just jumping to a different subject, especially for this album, it's not a concept album, but it's a concept within my thinking around the themes of the lyrics, because everything has like a freedom aspect and hope, and the right, the right to choose to live the life you want to live and be the person that you want to be. That goes through all of the songs. So now I'm satisfied. I'm proud of what I have done. Unfortunately, you don't really sell physical albums anymore, so it's really hard to get the lyrics. And just by listening to the songs, maybe people don't really understand what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, that is sometimes a little frustrating, that you have put down so much hard work and so much effort into something that people is just going to probably fly over the head of the listener. So I really hope for this album that people take the time to go out there and Google for the lyrics and just go through and see what I have to say, if you can't hear it, of course.
But I do find that very interesting, this notion that I think it was also said about this album, it's not a concept record, but like you say, there are some overarching themes like freedom and hope and kind of the empowerment in a sense. Was there a specific reason for you why these ideas came to you? And if so, you mentioned having thousands of ideas, vocal melodies, lines, whatever. Was there maybe one line that was kind of a catalyst for what would come?
No, I think it just is, sign of the times. What we see nowadays, that what happened around the world. I don't really want to go into politics, but you can take two things about the pro-choice movement that's going on in the U.S. That all of a sudden, like religious politicians is going to dictate, whether or not you're entitled to get an abortion, for instance. Like, hey, what the fuck? I mean, Christianity, we are living in the year 2024. Science should be number one. And, faith is still faith. It's something you believe in. I mean, we have to, hey, we have to rely on science nowadays, and that is something I'm really trying to talk about here. I also been during the pandemic been following the not drag racing but drag. I'm talking about drag,
Sure.
about people doing like a stage performance, dressing up, doing fantastic shows, but also being persecuted, being harassed in modern Western civilized countries. And hey, if they want to do that, they don't harm anyone. They're just adding something positive vibes. And that's also one of the things that really motivated me. And if you go back to the year 1996, when we recorded Glory to the Brave, people were kind of laughing at what we were doing. And they were asking, why don't you play music that people want to hear? And the only answer that we could give them was that we play the music that we want to play. And I think it's more, even now, this is like 28 years later, we still do that. We play music from our heart. We play the music that we want to play because we have a passion for this. And no one should dictate our lives. And I would never dictate anyone else's lives either.
No, I think that's very interesting, because that's what kind of went on in my head as well. The similarities with a young metalhead and feeling like an outcast because of the way he dresses or whatever, and then sticking to his dream. And there's some mention to that, Capture the Dream, and there's a couple of other songs. So if we go back all the way to your younger years, what was the dream for you as you were growing up?
Well, I started with music very, very late because I was into sports when I was a kid. I was I was in the Swedish junior national team of swimming until I was 16 years old. So that was my upbringing. But with every type of sports, you get your power from listening to music, and that was heavy metal music. And I started to sing a little bit when I was 14, and I just was kind of bragging that I could sing, which I couldn't sing for shit. But my dream was to have a band, and my biggest influence at that time was Dee Snider, Twisted Sister.
Okay.
The glam scene. So for me, this sort of, I mean, that was drag. The glam scene was drag, early type of drag.
Painting, nails, everything,
Yeah, and no one said anything about it. So I thought, that would, like, dreams. No, that was kind of my I think that was kind of a dream, a far-fetched dream, I would say, because I don't know. I wanted to be a professional swimmer, which doesn't exist. It took me 8 years to realize that, like, oh shit, there's no money in swimming. I need a job. Like, oh fuck, I don't want to do that. But I was so into music, like listening to music. So I always wanted to work with music, but I never thought I would be actually on the vinyls, on the CDs that people were selling, because I was the guy who was selling them in the first place. But then, overnight, everything, my life just changed, and this far-fetched, impossible dream became reality. And I think this is proof that everything is possible. Everything is possible, but you have to believe in yourself, and there are no fucking shortcuts. You need to, put down the work. And if you believe in something, go out there and capture your dream.
That's an awesome message. And I believe part of this then is also finding the right people along the way to work with and to help your dream continue. And last time I spoke to Oscar, we talked about you a little bit, why that chemistry works so well, the creative chemistry. So from your perspective, what is it about you and Oscar? Why has it lasted for so long, which is quite rare as well? But what makes that creative synergy so perfect?
I think it's based on a mutual respect to each other, that we are very, very similar. Sometimes we say we're sharing the same brain because we think exactly the same and we say the same things, but also that we try to, it's also based on trust, that I know when Oscar is done with his part and he hands it over to me. Of course, there's always like bouncing things on and forth, but I know when he sends something over to me, he tried every possible way to make this song better. And the same goes for Oscar trusting me that when I'm done, I've tried every possible angle how to approach this song. And if I run into problems, if I need like a second opinion, I always talk to him. So there's also the trust that we help each other out. If you go back to the day that we met for the very, very first time, I think that was the game changer in the story. That I was supposed to help HammerFall out at one show because their singer had to go on tour. But this was back in the when it was still like a hobby band, like a side project. Sure. And I walked down the stairs and I heard a melody played on the guitar. And like, I went down there and I looked at Oscar. I pointed at him, Dorian Gray, Stormwitch. And his jaw dropped like, you know, Stormwitch? Yeah, that's one of my absolute favorite bands. Do you have this album? I have all the albums, I said. We connected. And then we realized that we had basically the same upbringing when it comes to heavy metal music. We had the same influences in these obscure bands and kind of the music that we wanted to play. And from there on, it was kind of easy. But of course, you have people around you that you have to convince.
Right.
I think it's good that we teamed up, because if you're standing alone, if you're the only person in the band, you form a band, then you can't really bounce your ideas with anyone, because they maybe want to, no, we should be a little more symphonic. Oh no, we should be a little more complicated things. It should be technical. Like, no, this is heavy metal music. I mean, we have to stick within the boundaries of what we believe and consider heavy metal music, being, but still, it's a big fucking frame. It's because you can do so many things without, stepping too far out of the boundaries. And no, it's. I think I answered the question. I'm just getting confused now. Thank you.
No, but I mean that creative, that creative partnership seems to be working so well. So that's awesome to hear. And what I find interesting then as well is I think for this album, Oscar said some of the things he sent back after you had worked on it were some of the best ideas he's heard ever. And then you yourself, about your own performance, mentioned that you're really happy with the vocals and how you sounded and everything. What are you just in a really good place at the moment? What makes this album so fruitful for you in a sense?
In a good place, yes, I would say we kind of lost the momentum like every other band did in 2020 when the pandemic struck, and it was really hard to get back from that. But like I said, the end is coming closer, and you really need to work harder now than you did in the beginning, because you know that the expiration date is around the corner. It can be this year, next year, 10 years from now, who knows? But I'm also so damn proud that HammerFall is still a band that makes a difference. That we release an album number 13, that with songs that people want to hear live. And that's been the case from the first album up until the 12th album. Like, yeah, new album, cool, great songs. I can't wait to hear these songs live. Meanwhile, you have other bands releasing album after album that doesn't make any difference. They just have to release something to be able to go on tour.
Right.
And that will kind of, at the end of the day, that will kill your career, in my opinion. That people will remind you, because the last thing you kind of deliver, the last album you put out there, is what people will remember. I'm just so proud and happy that album number 13 with HammerFall is such a strong album. And it is an album that will go down in HammerFall history as one of the strongest. So it's, I don't know, maybe it's, the older you get, the more you realize that we've been living our dream for so long without knowing it. And the appreciation of being able to tour the world, meet the fans. This has been my living since 1997.
Sure.
I don't know anything else. You send me out to apply for a job. I don't know. How the hell do you do that? when I stopped working, it didn't even have a computer. This was before the cell phones, you know. I haven't been working since that. That's fucking Stone Ages.
But and then I mean this is something that has always fascinated me as well. But do you think this is very? I mean, I'm sure it happens in other genres of music as well. But for me, it seems like metalheads, for some reason, they seem really involved. And once you're a metalhead, it almost seems like you're a metalhead for life. How do you see kind of the fan base of what you do, and the fact that they are still around 30 years later, and all that kind of?
Because heavy metal music is timeless music. Heavy metal to me stands for quality. Not everything, of course, but
Sure.
The core. I would say the core of the metal bands. Then, of course, we had the hair metal movement that kind of killed the whole thing at the end of the 80s. But I think it kind of heavy metal needed a little break to reinvent itself and kind of come back with the essence of what heavy metal music is. And then I think we kept it like that ever since the late 90s. So, I mean, the 80s was not even 10 years. It was not even a decade. The 80s, which we are talking about, that was only a couple of years. Then everything changed. But the return of heavy metal has been going on for 25 years. And it's still very solid because we do not mix. Heavy metal is this. If you want to play something else, well, then you can do the subgenre. If you want to, you know, because there's so many subgenres now.
Sure.
Yeah, in the 80s, what kind of subgenres did you have? You have hard rock, heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal came, but this was kind of a little before the genre black metal was invented, but the sound came later. The sound came later. Venom invented the name, but then I would say maybe a band like Bathory invented the sound.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's and for me, growing up with metal, that is the music that for me as a teenager, and that is the music that brings back memories, good and bad. I wouldn't say that I'm as hungry as I was before trying to find new albums to listen to. And a matter of fact is it's just too many albums being released nowadays, so it's really hard to find. I lived at the record store as a kid. Every week I was down there just going through all the new releases, and it wasn't that many releases, to be honest with you, if you compare nowadays, because I think the problem is that the demo stage doesn't exist animiore. People do not record demos. They record albums for Spotify. Like, oh, no, don't. Never, if it's a demo, keep it a demo. Put it someplace else where you can remove it. Because maybe there's a song there in 10 years' time that, oh, no, we should have done it like this. Yeah, but it's already registered. It's on Spotify. It's everywhere. And we can't really take it back. So just, be a little cautious. Be careful. Just because you have a song that's been recorded, you don't have to put it out there, because who's going to find it?
Right.
It's not going to make a difference. Maybe you can brag to your friends. Yeah, we just released our first single. Okay. On Spotify. Okay. How many plays the first year? Yeah, less than 100. Okay, cool. Probably your mom, your dad, your grandma, your neighbor. Yeah, they should be a little more careful.
No, I definitely agree, and I think you can see this with a lot of art and movies and stuff as well these days, where it feels like they're just pushing them out and not kind of getting the quality to a certain level, which obviously is still important. But this is also a good bridge, I suppose, to Hope Springs Eternal, because I believe that was a song that didn't work for a while for Oscar, and then for some reason you managed to figure it out in a way. Can you talk a little bit about how you? Because that idea was quite a couple of years old, or maybe even a long time, but you managed to figure it out. How so?
That was one of the last songs that came. I mean, writing a song, like a vocal melody or lyrics to something, it can take anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of months, because if you don't feel it, you need to wait until the kind of the music talks to you before you kind of understand. Like I said, I could do something okay in 5 minutes, but no one's going to care. It's just going to be another song. For this one, I knew Oscar had this idea for a chorus, but he didn't really know what to do with it. But I never heard this idea until he presented the song to me, like late last year. And I remember he said, see if you can do something with this, if you get a feel for it. Because I don't think this song was really, I think the problem was that, okay, are we going to use it or not? Now it was kind of up to me to see if I could, make any sense out of it. And I listened through it, and right away, I got an idea. I listened to it again, like, okay, you know what? Let's start recording. And I always have, you see, my microphone is next to me here. So the idea I had, I recorded, and I would say like 80-90% of that ended up on the song, because I had such a strong feeling to it. And then when it came to the lyrical concept, this is one of the strongest songs on the album, and this is also the underdog song on the album, because I think it's so strong, the way it builds up. First chorus is only me, but then you have the choir coming in there, and if you take all these pieces and then you add the lyrical concept to it, I think people can really make it personal for themselves, and they can really feel the power in the song, because it's everything. Every song also on this album starts with like a little explanatory sentence, and for this song, it is, if it were not for hope, the human heart would break. That kind of tells the story of every person on the planet Earth.
Sure.
Like if you take away hope from people, there's nothing left. And that also raises an important question about existence and your time on Earth. Like, learn from yesterday. These are very, very simple things, but it's a mantra we should never forget. Learn from yesterday, hope for tomorrow, but live your life right here, right fucking now. Pardon my French.
I think that's a beautiful place to end the interview. Joacim, may I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thank you. It's an honor.